Hey everybody, my name is Bryan Enders, and I am giving you a rundown of Microsoft Teams today in terms of hosting a Governor's Cup event, whether that is 6th grade showcase, districts, regionals, whatever the case may be. For those of you who don't know me, I am an assistant coach at Russell High School. I have also been the camp director for the KWAC summer camp for 7, 8, 9 years, something in that ballpark. Um, so, I've been asked to do this video with Microsoft Teams because that's what I used in our JV Challenge section. So I've got some experience with it, and it worked really well for the most part for us. All right, don't have to use Microsoft Teams. That's not what this video is about. Certainly, I think a lot of people for JV Challenge use Google and maybe a few use Zoom. I'm not too sure what other people used for sure, but I think they used both of those options. And they all have their pluses and minuses. And I'm going to go through that here, and then I'm going to show you how to actually set up Teams. Right, so it is up to you what you choose, but I think Teams is the best overall package. All right, so one of the reasons is it is one-stop shopping. All right, as you'll see here in a minute, literally anything you want to do on competition day can be done on Teams. All right, Google for me is really annoying. I say this later down in the slide. Every time you want to do something, you have to open a new app. So if you want to edit a Word document, you have to open Google Docs. If you want to edit a PowerPoint presentation, you have to open Google Slides, or so you're always going to a different app in the Google system. But with Microsoft, it's all built in together as one. And so because they're all built in together, it is very easy to go from one task to the next, or from one room or channel to the next channel very easily. And so you'll see all of that once we get the team kind of set up and rolling with that. Secure and private channels. So Teams is basically a channel-driven platform. And so you can have one channel for a certain quick recall match and a second channel for a different quick recall match or whatever. And we'll set all that up here in a minute. Just give you an idea of what that looks like. But you can set these channels to be either open for everybody in the team to look at, or they can be private and secure. And so I think I say in there, if you want a private room for like players and coaches, a team room like you would normally have at an in-person competition, you can set that up and you can lock it down so that only people from that school can access that room. If you want to have a room for your quick recall officials to get together and preview questions and nobody else is allowed in that room, you can set up that room and you can put the quick recall questions into that room and nobody else will be able to access them except for the people you invite. And so that provides a lot of extra security while also giving it a lot of easy access. Right? You don't have to go somewhere else or send out a bunch of emails to get people access to certain things. So I really liked that feature while setting up our JV Challenge. And the last one is the file sharing system. It's a lot like Google, but with the Microsoft products, so Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and not the Google knockoff versions, which, as you all probably know, don't always work the way we want them to. So, right, those are some of the advantages. You can probably find others. Those are the ones I like. There are disadvantages for sure. That's true of all these platforms. Teams is going to have the most upfront work. It takes a little bit of elbow grease to get everything set up and everybody into the system. And then because of what Teams is, people have had less experience with it. So you're going to have to make sure you take some time to get comfortable with the system for yourself, for your team, for the other players and the other coaches and the other schools in your section. Right? It just takes time to get used to it. But I think if you can take the time to do it, it will pay off. The other problem we had and this is a big issue for comp and FPS, is the Word documents, because of what Teams is, cannot be secure to an individual person. Right? They can be secure to a channel, but not to an individual person. Right? So theoretically, it would be very easy if you just use Teams to have person X be able to open up person Y's comp booklet and change something. Right? I have not found a way around this yet, just in Teams. And so what we did for JV Challenge is we created a Google folder in a Google Drive, added a bunch of Google Docs, and then secured each of those individual files to individual students. All right, so it's not the best system for FPS and composition right now. If I find a way around this in the future, I will certainly tell John Bennett with KAAC that, hey, this is something you need to look into. This could really work. But for now, you probably still want to look at Google for that part of the competition. But on the Saturday competition day, I still think Teams is the best to use. All right, so let me exit this. And so we're going to set up a dummy team account, essentially. And this is basically the process you're going to walk through. In your school accounts, the state and what my tech people have told me at my school district is within the last year, the state has bought access to Microsoft Teams for all teachers in the state of Kentucky and all students in the state of Kentucky. So you have access to Microsoft Teams. You may not realize you do, depending upon if your district uses more Google stuff or if they use Outlook for email or the Microsoft things. Different districts, different things. So you definitely have access to it. It may just be you need to talk with your tech people to get it completely working. Right? Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the way Teams is set up at the state level, I think it basically is locking down access to anybody outside of your school district. So you can't use your school account to initially create the team, which is annoying as all get out. Maybe your tech people know how to do it, but I was not able to get a hold of mine before JV Challenge to figure that particular hurdle out. So I'm not quite sure. All right, so what I did is I created a special Gmail account. I just went to Google, created a special Gmail account for JV Challenge, got a password, and then I went to Microsoft Teams. I went to the page where we're sitting right now and created a free version of Teams. Right? Teams is also available for free, even if you don't have access through your school. So it is very easy to get on. There's almost no difference between the paid version that you have access through your public school or through the free version here. All right, so I'm just going to click on this first link, and I'm going to hit sign up for free here. Again, we have to sign up with our new email account. You have to basically create a fake Microsoft account. So Teams test 23 at gmail.com. That's the email I created. All right, now be careful here when you're going to create your team. I picked business and organization. I think school would work just fine if you want to click on that. But there are some individual features to these that are different. Do not pick personal. If you pick personal, it's basically going to create a Skype account for you, which doesn't do you any good. All right, so I'm going to click business and organization and hit next. Okay. Sorry about that. There we go. Create an account. I hope that's the right password. Oh, good. It was already in there. So, enter in my wonderful information. March 2nd is the same day that Dr. Seuss was born. All right, so they're going to send you an email with a code. To verify this account, you probably don't want to get information, although if you do what I did and created a dummy account, not a big deal. So, all right. Yes, keep me signed in. All right, so a few hurdles to jump through there. Still a few more. For company name, you can just put like we were JV Challenge Section 14. So I'm just going to put test team. All right, it doesn't really matter. Microsoft's just looking for a little bit of basic info there. All right, and it's going to hopefully get us signed in here in just a second as it works. All right, so this is part of that upfront elbow grease that takes some time. Come on. Well. There we go. Start using Teams. Okay. So I'm going to ignore this. Actually, I'm not going to ignore it, but you should ignore this for the moment. You probably will not see this pop up unless you have used Teams before. Right, you're going to get presented with two options here to either download the Windows app or use the web app instead. Right, there are slight differences between the two. The downloaded version here in the blue button does have a few more features, although they are very high-level uses. They should not be things you really need access to necessarily. Right? I would still download it if you have a regular Windows computer or if you're doing it from school. I would go ahead and download the Windows app. If you have a Chromebook or something like that you're trying to run this off of, or if your students have a Chromebook, using the web app is just fine. We didn't see any issues with it in our JV Challenge section. So I would hit download the web app. I've already downloaded it, so I'm just going to either press launch it now or open Microsoft Teams, and it should pop up here. All right, so move that in here. So we're going to sign in with our Teams test 23 at gmail.com. And our password uh-oh. One second. Okay, sorry about that. I had to pause for a second. Something happened with my password because I was not paying attention, but I got it straightened out. All right, so signing into Teams here. And here is the Teams app. It is initializing, as you can see up there. So we're going to hit continue to our test team here. Take just a moment. And spinning circles. Everybody's favorite thing to see. All right, I'm going to pause it again and I'll come back once it's loaded. All right, so took a few seconds there, nothing too crazy. And so you can see the page we're on. I actually clicked on Teams over here on the side, on the left. There are several different options here. Most of them you're not going to need. You should be able to do everything through the Team app here. I'll briefly talk about chat a little bit towards the end, but just clicking on Teams here should take care of it. All right, we'll talk about the middle parts of the screen here in a minute. If you ever need to change something, Your profile is up over here, so you can mess with that however you want. So let's create a team. Right, let's do it. Oh, all sorts of options there. Let's just do it from scratch. All right, so we haven't actually created an organization yet, so you probably want to set this as public. So as you add people to that particular team, they're going to become part of your quote-unquote organization. So shouldn't be anybody outside of it that's trying to get in, especially if you created the fake email, or not fake email, but the extra email address to create all this. Public should be just fine. So test team is the title we're going to give it, and we're going to create it. Nice work. Hooray. All right, and then right away, before anything else happens, they're going to give you the option to add members to your team. All right, so I'm going to add my school email, which is what I would encourage you to do first as well. Like I said, you should have access. Sorry, trying to talk and type at the same time. You should have access through your school. And so what I actually did with the JV Challenge section, and what I'm essentially doing here, is I'm adding my school email, and then I'm going to essentially make my school email an owner as well. So I'm going to hit add. Right, and initially I would be only adding one person, or nobody if you don't want to use your school account as well. All right, so I'm going to hit close down here. All right, and here is the bare bones team we just created. All right, so over here on the left-hand side, all you see right now is the actual team, and there is one channel listed under that team. It's called General. Right, so channels, think of channels as rooms. Right, at an actual Governor's Cup competition, you have the quick recall room 1, quick recall room 2, testing room 1, testing room 2. You have a room for officials where nobody else is allowed in. You have your hospitality room if you want to do that. Right, that is basically the roles that channels are going to fill instead of having physical rooms. All right, so we'll get to adding those here in a second, but I want to talk about this main section. This is, you can see it highlighted over here, right? General's in a slightly lighter gray over there. I actually think I have dark mode turned on, so if you're not a fan of dark mode, I'm pretty sure you can get rid of that, and it will be white and happy. But this is where the main part of the page is going to be. All right, so let's say you need to put out a message for everybody to see. Right down here at the bottom, there's a blue button that said New Conversation. All right, and so I can put any message I want in that conversation. So let's just say hello. Right, and you can see, as Microsoft Teams thinks I don't know what I'm talking about, that message is going to pop up, and it's going to stay there for everybody to see. So anybody who joins the team should end up on the general page right away, and they will see the message you left. Now, if you get enough messages, you will have to scroll down to see all of them, or scroll back up to see the first ones. So it's kind of a nice feature for leaving some announcements. Specifically, though, if you actually look what it says here, start a new conversation, which I already did with hello, but it also says type the @ symbol to mention somebody. So let's say I want to mention the, Russell, my school email. All right, I want to get attention of a particular person. So I'm going to put the @ symbol, and then depending upon how many people you have or what you have set up, you'll actually be able to mention those individual people. They'll pop up as suggestions here. So that one popped up. So I'm going to click on it, and you can see my Russell email name popped up, and it's highlighted a different color. right? And so what that will essentially do is it will specifically notify that person, right? Nobody got notified with the first hello message because it was not aimed at anybody in particular. That was for everybody to see. So when they get on and they see it. But let's say I need, Bryan Enders to report to, oops, if I could type, quick recall room 1 to moderate a match. Boom. All right, because I put that @ symbol, they instantly will see that if they are on Teams at all, and we'll be able to tell, hey, they're talking to me, I need to go do whatever they just put. So I use that @ and then put people's names in or groups in quite a bit with JV Challenge. It was very easy to tell, the coaches specifically or everybody in the JV Challenge system or officials to do certain things at certain times just by putting that @ symbol. Right? It's easier than trying to add a bunch of emails to an email. I'll show you another way to do that and get a lot of groups of people together. So if you just need to mention a particular team, I'll show you how to set that up as well in a little bit. All right, so that's what the main page will do. There are some tabs along the top of this main page. So posts is where you're going to be dropped into anytime you click on a channel. That's where those conversations are going to happen. Files is probably the other tab you need to be interested in. Depending on... Okay, I don't know why it says that. Let me refresh the page there. Okay, my internet's just being difficult tonight for whatever reason. Normally, it will have a place for you to drop in particular files. You can just literally drop in any Word files you have into this page, and everybody who has access to this channel will have access to those files. All right, it's a pretty nice system there. All right, so I'm going to go back to posts so we see the original messages, and I can get rid of the weird can't get your file message. It's bizarre. All right, the other thing that is very important is this little button up here, the Meet button in the upper right-hand corner. That is going to start the video conferencing part of Microsoft Teams, which is obviously very important for what we are trying to do. So I'm going to click on it, and I'll just leave it as new channel meeting. I'm actually going to leave my camera off because I just don't want to fool with that. I'm also going to turn the audio off for this meeting just so we don't get any feedback. I don't think there would be, but better safe than sorry. So I'm going to hit join now just so I can show you all some of the things that are there inside the meetings. All right. So it will pop up and give you the opportunity to invite individual people. You can invite people outside of the Microsoft team, but there should not be any reason to. Right? I'm going to show you here in a minute how to add individual people into the team, which you already saw initially when I first got on. It's the same process. It's just finding that again. So I'm going to hit X there. Everybody should be able to join your meetings without you inviting them. So that shouldn't be an issue. But there are some, common features that you'll see across the various video platforms. You can show the participants over here on the side, so no big deal there. If you need to have a chat conversation, you can do that. We actually used this during testing Windows, which not necessarily the best choice, but sometimes we just need to be able to contact students and tell them, hey, your camera went off, or sometimes students need to tell us, I'm finished taking my test, is it okay if I leave? Right? If a student just dropped off, we had no idea if they'd finished their test or not, so we had them tell us in the chat during the testing windows that was going on. They were finished. So that's a common feature across a lot of things. Raising your hand, Not that we really need to here, but if you're looking at the participants and somebody hits raise their hand, you'll actually see their little hand pop up. Again, not necessarily super useful for what we're doing, but it does have some nice features. Turning camera on and off, unmuting, sharing content are all right there. And if you hit these three little dots for more actions, most of these aren't too important. You can apply some background effects, meaning you can blur out the background if you think it's going to be annoying. But there are two particular features that are important. One of them is this large gallery preview. Once you get above a certain number of people with video on, you should be able to click that button and rearrange them. I think the number is 10. If you have 10 active videos, if you click that button, it will arrange them so that you can see all live video feeds. And so if you have a testing room with 16 kids, you need to be able to see all of those various rooms, so you can click on that large gallery and see every individual student at the same time. Right. Some of the platforms, whether it's Zoom or Google or Microsoft, have varying levels of capability with that. So, take that for what you will. The other huge feature here that this is one of my favorite things about Teams that I forgot to mention earlier. This last option says turn off incoming video. And so what that means is if you have 17 kids in a room all trying to show video during a testing window, that's a lot of bandwidth for an individual student computer to digest, right? So you're going to see internet crapping out. You're going to see their computer get really bogged down and slow down a bunch. If they click that button, what it will do is block all other video feeds. Right, so they won't see anybody else's video, which is great. The student taking the test doesn't need to see anybody else taking the same test. Right? They just need to focus on taking the test. So they can eliminate the distraction. They can save themselves some bandwidth by clicking on that button and blocking everybody else's video. Right? Your moderators, your proctors for the test, those people obviously can't click that button necessarily, but students can, and so students hopefully are able to get a better experience with that turned on, right? Stopping that incoming video. Right. Love that feature. That's the only platform I found that has that feature. So, now, again, this is the free version, and so all of my options are up here. I think if you're using your school version, which will be true for most of the other people, because you're going to be inviting them from their school account, their options may be in a bar down here in the middle. Don't hold me to that. Again, I'm used to using the free version by this point because I've done it so much with JV Challenge and whatever. So, but I think the bar is down here in the middle. But same kind of options are available. Shouldn't be a difference at all. Right? And whenever you're done, just like you do in the other ones, you just hit leave. And, okay. Congratulations on hosting your first meeting. All right, and it will take you back to your main page. You can even see the meeting that was had there. What you can even do is if there was an active chat and there are people saying, hey, I'm done with this test, I'm done with this test, I'm done with this test, you can actually see them putting that and go back and check to see them putting that. So, don't know if that would be useful, but there it is. All right, so that's some of the uses for Microsoft Teams. I'm going to show you how we set it up for JV Challenge, how I set this up for JV Challenge. All right, if you click these three little dots over here in this left side panel on your team name, you're going to get a series of options that pop up. All right, and the first one I would go to is Add Channel. All right, now I'm not going to add all the channels that I added for JV Challenge. I think I ended up with about 20 total channels. But creating a channel is, like I said, setting up an individual room. And so there are certain things, certain rooms you have to have. Right? So first off, let me do written composition. They had their own room. And I'm going to, down here under privacy, right now it's standard, so everybody who joins the team, whether they do written composition or not, could join that team if it's standard, or join that channel if it was standard. Don't know that you necessarily want that. Right? You don't need a quick recall person sniffing around on the day that they're writing composition and accidentally joining that team meeting when they shouldn't be in there. Right? Not that they're doing anything malicious, but again, you're trying to control the environment as best you can, just like you would in your school. So I'm going to set that to be a private channel. Right? And so only specific people that you invite as the owner of the team will have access to that channel. Right? I'm going to hit next. It's going to add the channel for me, and it's going to want me to invite people. I'm going to go ahead and invite my school email that I added and add. All right, I'm going to hit done, and now you can see over here in the left-hand side, we have two channels. We have the general channel. So if I click on it, it gets highlighted in gray. It says general up here. And we have written composition, which has that little locked symbol, and written composition up here in the corner. Right, and so that little locked symbol means only certain people have access to it. That's the privacy setting. All right. Other channels, you want to have some testing rooms. So testing room 1, let's say you want to have the math testers in there. All right, they have a different amount of time. So I set up a separate room for the math testers. Again, I think you want that to be private. You want to make sure students go to the correct testing room. All right, you don't want somebody taking a science test, slipping into the math room and getting 10 extra minutes to do it, or whatever the case is. All right, so next, set that one to be private. We also created testing rooms for 1 testers and 2 testers that were not taking math. I would just add your school email to all of these channels as you make them. It's easier that way than having to go back and do it all for yourself. And you can see again, that room pops up over here. So testing rooms, I would do 1 for math, 1 for 1 testers that aren't taking math, and 1 for 2 testers that are not taking math. I think having all of those options limits the number of video feeds that your proctors have to have active. Kids should be blocking, like I showed you in the actual video. They should be able to block incoming video. But your proctors have to see all those videos. The fewer of them there are, the better off they'll be. So we try to keep the numbers down by having 3 separate testing rooms. It means you need more proctors, but hopefully you can find parents or fellow teachers to help account for those numbers. Beyond that, the other competition room you're going to need, especially if it's 6th grade showcase. If you're doing districts or region and you're watching this for that, you're going to need an FPS room as well, but I would just set that to be a written comp kind of room or testing room. Type in FPS, set it as a private channel. Right? For quick recall rooms, the actual brackets for KAAC have individual match numbers listed, and so I put a quick recall room for each match. And I left those to be standard. All right. We want teams having an easy time to get in and out of those rooms. And although for quick recall match 1, you should know ahead of time who's playing in that room. By the time you get to match 3, match 4, match 5, who knows what teams are playing in that room. You can't predict that ahead of time. So I would leave those standard so everybody can access them. It should make the day flow a little easier on that Saturday of competition. So I'm going to add that room. All right, I'm going to add another one. I'm just going to do quick recall room 2. Add that. Oh, should have put match 2. Whoops. Okay, so I made a mistake. So click those 3 little dots beside the channel name, and I'm going to edit this channel. You don't really have a bunch of options, but you can rename it. So I'm going to call this match 2. All right, so if you only have 4 teams in your group, should be 4 or 5 for districts. I don't know how they're doing it for 6th grade showcase, but I know for JV challenge they try to make smaller groups, so that was easier to do. Things were a little more manageable as everybody was trying to figure out what was going on. I imagine they're doing the same thing with 6th grade showcase, but I can't prove that to you. But chances are, round 1, right, the first set of quick recall questions will only require 2 rooms. Right, so I have the 2 rooms there. I went ahead and in our JV challenge room created match 3, match 4, match 5. I think match 6 was the first of the double elimination finals. I did not create a match 7 because that's only if needed, and it's going to be the same 2 teams that were just playing match 6. So I just had the 1 room for the finals. So there's no reason to create multiple rooms there. All right, but you get the idea there. I would have a room for each individual match. The reason why is if you only have 2 quick recall rooms, there's a chance that, maybe one room gets ahead of the other one because, match 1 room only had this match 1 channel. Maybe their teams didn't have any technical difficulties, but the teams in match 2 did. And so match 1's done really early. And so if you only have 2 quick recall rooms, maybe one of those teams in the first match jumps into the second match and, comes in the middle of a question. That's just going to wreck everybody's concentration. You don't want to have that happen. So having an individual room for each match, I think, makes things a little safer for everybody. So you can do with that as you will. I think that's the way to go. All right. So there are certainly some other rooms I would highly suggest you set up. I say rooms, I mean channels, but again, think of them the same way. The first one I did was a coach's channel. And I'm going to make this private, right? This is only for coaches. And so, if you need to meet with the other coaches, something comes up, something changes, you can certainly meet with them there. It's basically a place for the coaches to meet if they need to. What I also did with the coaches channel is you have to have some place to release the tests so they can look at them and inquire them if they want to. I did that in the coaches channel. Right? It's relatively secure, so not every kid's going to be able to access it. Right? Only coaches can. And so they are now secured, but coaches can see them still. All right, so in the coaches channel, what we did, we went to Files, which for some reason still isn't working. Thank you, Microsoft and my computer. It should work for you. If it doesn't, I'm sorry. I apologize ahead of time, but it looks like it's trying to work now. No, still didn't. Anyways, we were able just to drop them into Files there, and you were able to see the tests. No big deal. All right, so that was a good thing about the coaches channel. We also created home rooms. So I coach at Russell, so I'm just going to put Russell homeroom. And I'm going to make this private. Right? You really only want Russell people to have access to the Russell homeroom. Right? Same thing for your school. You don't want everybody to have access to it. The one exception is going to be you, the person who sets this up. You're going to have access to all the rooms. There's no way around that. So sorry to everybody. Hopefully nobody gets bent out of shape over that. So in our JV Challenge section, we had 4 different teams. So I had 4 different homerooms, 1 for each team. Some of them used them more than others, but it was someplace for the coaches to either meet with their kids or get their kids' attention. Hey, we need to go to this quick recall room now. So lots of uses there for that homeroom. Did that. So, whoops. Sorry. I accidentally missed the 3 dots, so it minimized the team. If I click it again, it opens back up. There are all the channels back. I'm going to add another channel. We call it staff channel. And again, private. Right? Obviously, this is not one that any student needs to have access to. What I did with this channel during JV Challenge is this was where I met with all the staff individually. So if they were proctoring a test, I met with them before the test started, just to talk them through the process, make sure they understood Teams, how that was going to work, and they understood how to actually give the test. So really, really useful for that. I met with quick recall officials, whether they were the moderators, whether they were the judges, or perhaps most importantly this year, the buzzer operators. The Quizable Pro that we're using for the buzzers in KAAC, not the easiest things in the world to run. There's a lot of tech that goes with that. So buzzer operators are unbelievably important right now. So do make sure you thank your buzzer operators and make sure they are ready to go with that. So all that can be done on the staff channel. I also, add a channel, created a quick recall secure room. Right, and obviously it's secure, so I'm going to make it private. Hit next. Now, this room is only for moderators and judges. My buzzer operators do not have access to this because they shouldn't have access to the questions. And so the chief official, I also gave them access to this room. They went in here, dropped the quick recall questions into files, and so the moderators and the judges were able to preview the questions ahead of time, just like you would do in person. They go to a room, they sequester themselves, they don't talk to any students, they just preview the questions. Same thing here. Right, they are separated from the students, no student has access to them, they can view the questions in peace and quiet. So that was pretty good. I also created we ended up calling it lead official room. Not quite sure what the right term here is. Again, probably private. It's got officials in it. I basically made this room for myself as contest manager, for my chief official, and for our scorekeeper, our chief scorer. I think that's what it's called. I don't remember all the roles. But there are only 3 of us that had access to that room, and it was basically a place for the 3 of us to talk and figure out what we were doing next. Organizing who's going where, doing what. Worked out really, really well. We actually spent probably more time in that room than any other, just talking through whatever we needed to talk through. Very nice. Right. Last room that I want to talk about is debatable, right? Different regions are going to do it different ways. This is just how we decided to do it for JV Challenge. At your coaches meeting, you may decide to do something different. Right? We created a separate room for inquiries. Right? And obviously, you want that to be private. And so the people who had access to this room were your chief official and your coaches. For testing or quick recall, anytime there's an inquiry, we just had them go to that inquiry room and just put a new conversation. Something simple like that. And so we were monitoring, the chief official really was monitoring that channel all day. Anytime somebody put something in there, she went and looked at it and then started the inquiry process. So you lose some of that formality that KAAC has with the forms and everything, but where everything is virtual this year, having that much rigidity just is painful to make things work. So we opted to skip that process entirely, even with quick recall. We didn't have an inquiry form. The judge in the room never dealt with an inquiry. If the coach had an inquiry, they came in here and said, inquiry on toss-up 8 in round 2. Right? And then they typed out whatever their issue was. I don't really know what the issue would be, but there you go. And so inquiry got posted there, and for a rebuttal, because all coaches have access to it, the coach from the other school could see what the inquiry was, and they could write a rebuttal in the chat. And so we actually found this to be pretty useful. Outside of the first inquiry we had didn't have any of like the information you need, like what round, what toss-up, what question number it is, things like that. It was just like, isn't such and such such and such? And it was like, okay, we have no idea what you're talking about. Right, so go over with your coaches ahead of time if you go for this option. Make sure they know you still need to have some information in there for us. Otherwise, your chief official is going to spend more time looking for the question than making a ruling. But we kind of like this process because it let our chief official get started on looking up information right away. I think probably all of us have been part of a match before where you submit an inquiry at the end of a game and it takes half an hour before that chief official gets back to you with their ruling on it or whatever. Like, it's just a very time-consuming process. This kind of cuts out a lot of that time because they can start looking at it right away. They don't have to wait till the end of the match. So, lots of leeway there in how to do inquiries this year. So that's the option we picked. So, that's the general setup of what we had for our JV challenge section. Obviously, a few more rooms. We had more teams. We had more quick recall matches than that. I even set up a couple of practice rooms for quick recall if anybody just wanted to jump in there. It just made my quick recall rooms a little cleaner for actual competition day. Not something you have to do, just a possible suggestion. So that's all great. You have your basic, framework for a team now, for your competition, but I haven't added anybody else, right? It's me and myself are in this team, right? I added my school email to all of these because now I have access to this team anywhere. Whether I'm at school or at home, I should be able to access it very easily through my school email. I personally check my school email more than any of my other emails, so that works for me. May not work for you. You may just want to keep it to yourself, and that's fine. But at some point, you're going to start having to add individual people on this team. And this is another place where it's just a lot of upfront setup. So if you click those 3 little dots beside the team name, right? None of these channels, just the team name. The third option down says add members. All right. So we're going to click on that and it's going to pop up here. Now, you're going to have to add each individual email to this list. All right. And I don't have a bunch of emails ready to go to show you what that's going to look like, but I would imagine 10, 15 kids per team, plus coaches, plus staff. It's a lot of names. It's a lot of emails to put in. Right? This is where the other coaches in your section have to help you out. Right? They have to not only give you the student email, but it has to be correct. Right? One of the issues we ran into is one of the teams in our region had students go by names that weren't their official names that their school emails were created with. And so when I put in the names, or they actually misspelled one of the names too, they added an extra S or something like that. And so when I added those names to the team, the emails got sent to email accounts that didn't exist. And so those students never got access to it. And that team didn't check it well enough until it was so close to the deadline, I couldn't figure out what was wrong until it was just too late. So we had some issues morning of competition with that. Right. So make sure the emails are correct that you enter in. It will make your life so much easier. If they add the wrong email, it's going to be a nightmare, or could be a nightmare if you're not really paying attention to them. All right. It also goes to show you, make sure that your teams, if you choose to go with Microsoft Teams, make sure the other schools, I should say, in your section are testing this out ahead of time with all of their students. Easier said than done. I think we're all experiencing, students not being particularly responsive always right now, but super important to make sure you try to do that before competition day. Trying to think of other little things. Okay. Yeah, this is a big one. So you're going to add a bunch of people to the team, which is great. What they will see are all of these public channels. So the ones that don't have a lock beside them. Right? To get them into these individual private channels, you're going to have to click on more options, and you're going to have to add those members individually this way. Right? So not only do you have to add them to the full team, you then have to add them to a particular private channel if you want them to see that channel. Good news is you don't have to add in their email again. If you just start typing that person's name, it should automatically pop up if they're part of the team. Most of the time. All right? It's a little glitchy for whatever reason. I think I finally figured it out late in the JV challenge process why this was happening. I think the person has to sign on to the team before you can add them to any of these private channels. I could be completely wrong. That's just what it looked like happened. Right? So for whatever reason, anytime you use Teams on the desktop, it's a little glitchy with adding people to private teams. There is a workaround. If you download the Teams app onto your phone, it is easier to add people on there. It's not so glitchy. It's just a lot of menu tracking. All right. Not fantastic, but it's for me, because I knew what I was doing, it was worth the struggle to add people to those teams. May or may not be for you. Trying to think. Last thing I want to show you is how to set up groups of people. So again, I click those three little dots beside the test team. Right? This is basically any time you need to change something about your team, you click those three little dots there. And I'm going to hit Manage Tags. All right, and it's like, oh, your team doesn't have any tags yet, so I'm going to create a tag. All right, so tags are basically going to be attached to individual names for people who do certain things. And so, I put a Russell homeroom, and let's say you want to be able to contact everybody who's from Russell all at once. So if you type the tag name Russell, and let's say you add people to that tag name, I'm going to add the person with the Russell independent email account. You can hit create the tag. And let me close this. And now if I go to, let's say I go to the general channel here. I start a new conversation, and I put at Russell. One of the new options that pop up is a little tag, and it says Russell. Right, so everybody who's got that tag added to them is now going to see whatever message you put. Let's put hello again. Right, so by putting those tags on, you can now notify groups of people all at once. One more thing to show you here with those tags, and just even with adding members. When you click those three little dots, if you hit Manage Team, that little gear icon, the very first one, this is going to pop up and show you everybody in your team. Right, so right now, there's the test email that created this account. That's why he's an owner. And there is my school email that I added. They are a member. Right, so what I would do is change this person to an owner, right? Your school account, if you add that email, I would switch them over to an owner. I'm not going to here, so we still have a member, but you really don't want to have any other owners than yourself. That gives people a little more freedom to add and remove people, which you probably don't want. This is also some place where you can add and remove tags rather than going through the three little dots. This is especially useful if you've created the tag ahead of time and then you add somebody later. You can just click on this and these tags will pop up and you can just select them. So if you add somebody the day before competition and they are a staff, moderator, and I don't know, coach, just make something up. It's an interesting person there, but let's say they get 3 different tags there, you can just check mark those 3 tags and they'll be added instantly to them. All right. Last thing I want to show you, this had some use for me during JV Challenge. There were a couple of individuals who were pretty tech savvy in our section that were able to just troubleshoot some things with me, try things out as I was testing, seeing what would work and what wouldn't. This chat feature, right? So all the way on the left-hand side, there's Teams and there's Chat. So I'm going to click on Chat, and this is basically an instant messenger. All right, so up here at the top of the smaller gray box it says New Chat. Right, anybody who's in the group you can chat. So the only person I have right now is myself with that email. And you can type them any message. Change it up here. Say, what's up? And just like when you put the @ symbol to somebody specific, this will notify them directly because it's a chat. It already knows you're directing your message towards them. And so this was useful with certain individuals. Again, they're pretty tech savvy. They knew what was up with the chat. They had a pretty good understanding of how to do things. So it did have some uses for me. Not a bunch. It's not something you have to use. All right, so that's basically the setup we used for JV Challenge. Overall, I think it went really smooth. We had one team, like I said, that had some struggles. And there's fault to go around there to everybody, me included. Making sure you're getting with those teams ahead of time is super important. Making sure coaches are putting in the right emails or giving you the right emails, super important. There's just lots of little bits of things that can combine together to go wrong. But that's true of all of these platforms. None of them is perfect. None of them is worthless. Right? It's about finding the one that works for you. I think this one has a lot of uses for me because I know how to set it up and I can get people trained pretty easy. That's why we made this tutorial, is hopefully that can help you figure things out as well if you're interested in using this. Feel free. I don't know exactly what the plan is with this video, but if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You've seen my email about 20 times in this video, so brian.enders@russellInd.kyschools.us. I will spend as much time as I can to help you out without doing it for you, obviously. So hopefully this was useful, and told you some stuff. I'm going to do a quick kind of wrap-up video after this one about Google Meet and Zoom. Those are the two other popular platforms that people are using. I'm not as familiar with them because I didn't have to use them for that. They have pluses and minuses. We're just going to kind of talk through those and things you can do on competition day if you decide to use those. So hopefully you found this useful. Thank you for watching this whole hour-long video, and good luck. Thanks, everybody.